Hey, what's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Nike KD18. There's some things to like, some things not to, so let's get into all of them. All right, so starting off in my favorite part of the 18s is the uppers. Now, I know this is the black label edition, but you know, in general, I still do like kind of just the idea of the uppers in terms of this external cuffed lace eyelet system. These 5 fingers that make up the lace eyelets are stitched into the uppers. In this version, it is rubber. Hopefully it is rubber in all editions of it, but that is stitched into the uppers and it gets really long going from the rear foot into the forefoot. So when you lock this down, you do get a much better lockdown than the KD 15, 16, and 17. Honestly, it seems like it's all the tongue and the lace eyelets doing that, because when we look into the heel counter, a little bit of changes there. Heel slippage, mild. You put an orthotic in it, it's still mild. You can notice just a tad more, but I wouldn't call it moderate. It is still mild. So that was really nice to see, just a really confident lockdown. Now, number 2, like as I said, the tongue isn't super padded, but it is pretty wide. You do get a gusset in there. And then going into the rear foot, I mean, you do get a decent amount of padding around the heel counter and ankle collar. The heel counter itself, though, is not that double thickness heel counter we've seen in some older KD models and some other Nike models. It is just a straight heel counter. So that was a little bit disappointing to see, but like I said, the lacing system on these, I know they borrowed it from ACG stuff, and obviously it's worked in the past, and you know, they thought, you know, just put it on this one, see if it does the same thing. And in my opinion, it definitely does provide a really strong lockdown. You do get some padding on the outside of the ankle collar, and I guess that's good if your legs are banging against somebody else's, right, when you're playing, but like I said, it doesn't do much for the internal padding, but like I said, still didn't matter with lockdown. As you go into the forefoot of the shoe, honestly, to me, even the black label looks a little bit cheap, but on the microscope, it is just a combination of textile and TPU mesh. So it's still doing its job. I mean, it's still nice. Nike says this is leather. It kind of feels like action leather. It does definitely feel like there's a coating on top of it. We'll get into that when we get into the upper durability test. But if you look at the heat mapping of these things, they only heated up 107 degrees. And for a shoe this heavy with this much going on in the uppers, I thought that was an absolute miracle. You can see all the thermal images. There's just a ton of places that heat can still get out of this. So really good engineering in the uppers in terms of keeping them breathable. Look at the breathability mapping on them too. Fog's getting out of everywhere on these things. So even though you do have all these accoutrements in the uppers and all these rubberized elements, pretty thick padding underneath of the forefoot, as well as pretty substantial uppers on top, still the breathability, actually exceptional, to be honest. Look at these things on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. The burr does more damage on the rubberized kind of lace eyelet system, which kind of creates a quasi drag guard, than it does this leather. That's why I kind of think it's action leather. It's definitely pretty gritty and it's pretty tough just to feel it. So yeah, like I said, to me, even though the uppers bring some weight to the shoe, they also bring in some really substantial feelings of security and lockdown. All right, beginning in the midsole teardown, I was so hoping they got rid of that shank strobel, that plastic piece in the forefoot that your ball of your foot just slammed right down on. And they didn't. This looks like the exact same midsole from the 17s with some minor tweaks. Now, number one, that first thing is the heel counter, right? That they made that, you know, a little bit thinner. You still do get an air strobel unit in the rear foot going kind of right into the middle of the midfoot, and then you get the zoom air unit, which is bottom loaded in the forefoot. I can't tell if the carrier is Phylon or Cushlon. It feels a little bit more dense, but it also feels a little bit springy, which, you know, is that a little bit more lively Phylon, or is that just standard Cushlon? It's kind of hard to tell on the microscope. It looks like Cushlon, but yeah, that's me. That shank strobel, it's still there. The thing is, I took a durometer reading of this one versus the KD17, and the durometer on this one comes in at 27, whereas it comes in on a 38 on the 17. And I don't know if that's because the KD17's been sitting in a box open for, you know, how many months since that review. So to me, it feels pretty darn similar to the shank strobel, but I just, you know, I give credit where credit is due. If the durometer says it's lower, but there might also be a reason for that. So you're still gonna get, like I said, your foot is still touching plastic in the forefoot. So you look at this thing on the bounce height test though, got 29 centimeters in the rear foot, 40 in the forefoot. I mean, yeah, it's a zoom air unit, plastic on top of it, it's gonna bounce. But yeah, it may give you a little bit of assist with kick when you're up on the balls of your feet, right? And you'd be bending your metatarsal heads. So it might be giving a little bit of protection from that. But, you know, like I said, when you're coming down on those metatarsal heads on this, to me, you need an orthotic with some pretty resilient padding in the forefoot. Think something like a Power Step Bridge, right, with more resilient eTPU foam in the forefoot. to really get into these. The good thing is they lock down an orthotic okay. All right, but getting into the outsole tread, once again, exactly the same as the KD17. You get 2 targeted areas, one under the 5th metatarsal, one under the 1st metatarsal, and then basically you have a pressure map kind of pattern going, radiating out from those. I look at it on the grip test ramp, and it's up to 41 degrees, so initial grip is just fine. It's just that these things pick up dust almost immediately. I mean, first day, first time on these were picking up dust. On really clean courts, like at the community center, those courts, they do a lot better. They don't pick up as much dust. They're not as unforgiving. On my court here, just putting these on right away, I was really kind of sliding out a little bit. Now, to a quick wipe down, they do just fine. So if you don't mind wiping them down or putting some protective spray on it, then yeah, you're gonna do pretty well, for sure. Just if you can keep the dust off them, that is the biggest thing, because these things do pick up dust. I look at these things on the speed ratio, they come in at a 2.02. Shank score of 0.2, you gotta give it to them, brings it up to a 2.25. Yeah, I kind of think that's where they are. You know, in terms of first step launch, when the tread is clean, yeah, I mean, that shank strobel, when you open the balls of your foot, yeah, it's just a large surface area of plastic that, you know, wants the spring. So yeah, you're gonna get a little bit more of that first step launch, just that there's nothing in the middle of the shoe, right, to keep it like stable there. So that's why I said containment. You know, in the middle of the shoe and in the rear foot, it can still kind of feel a little bit, I wouldn't say unstable because the shoe is pretty flat to the ground. You know, it does have a pretty decent lateral flange. You know, it's not unstable, but it is not the most stable thing on the planet, like something that would have a midfoot shank in it, or just something that will keep, you know, the middle of the shoe from buckling. When you're putting all that force through the shoe going side to side, it's much more of a kind of up on the balls of your foot type shoe. I like this thing on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds high grit sandpaper. I did get a millimeter of damage on this. The durometer was exactly the same, 14.5. And this was dyed rubber, and the ones I had before were translucent, still the exact same durometer. So it was interesting. I'd say these do their best on a very forgiving hardwood court, rubberized court, something that has some shock absorption under you. Because like I said, in the rear foot, they do fine in terms of shock absorption. They're one of the more comfortable shoes in the rear foot you can get. The uppers are some of the more comfortable you can get if you've got the right foot type. Just that forefoot, like I said, orthotic on top of it, you know, and you want these on something that is more forgiving underfoot. So not that they don't do well on a carpet or a vinyl court, it's just that, you know, if you got concrete right underneath you, asphalt, cement, that's where I think the ball of your foot can have some issues, especially if you're prone to those things. All right, but getting into the fit of the 18s, really similar to the 17s. Number one, they do have an 11-degree in-flare, so on the kind of upper limit of just pretty normal. But they do have a 3-degree resting eversion, and then those do allow an additional 3 degrees of eversion with loading. So these shoes definitely kind of kick in. That's what creates a little bit more of that stability and prevention against ankle sprains, but they are a little bit more easy to push in. Now, number one, I think that might be because they don't have as sturdy of a heel counter, right? They don't have that double thickness heel counter. And like I said, shank is all on the forefoot. There's really nothing bracing that middle of the shoe. That's probably why you get a little bit more degrees of eversion on these ones versus some others. Now, the other thing is they still have a 29.3 degree length, only 9 centimeter metatarsal width, 9.9 centimeter toe box width, and a toe box taper of 28 degrees. So they don't even get a centimeter bigger from the metatarsals to the toe box. They are pretty tapered shoes from metatarsal to toe box. The toe box taper is pretty standard for most basketball shoes. And so, you know, with me, my right foot on these was going numb playing in them after not a long time. Was that because of the plastic and just kind of, you know, the unforgiving nature of the forefoot and the taper in them? Was it just the taper from the metatarsals to the toes? I'm not sure. I definitely had pain in the 17s as well. So, you know, if you're a narrow, long-footed person, you're going to do great in these. A medium, I think you still just go true to size, just because you start going down half sizes on these to get the length reduction, and they're going to get really narrow on you. A 2E, I think, I'm not sure, I think in the 17, I said go true to size, you know, if you want to be able to break them in. Like I said, the uppers have a lot of padding and they have room to expand, so I guess you can break them in, try to go true to size, but it's going to be tough, right? So you can go up one half size, or it's going to be big, right? A 4E, it just might be a mismatch. Unless you're a long-footed 2E, unless you're a long 4E, then by all means, go up that one half size and these get a little bit more room. But to me, these are a little bit more of a narrow medium shoe fit, just because, like I said, of that taper from the metatarsals into the toes. Like I said, if you don't mind a break-in on them, putting some tennis balls, lacrosse balls in them as a 2E, then I think you can try to go true to size. But like I said, it's that length. That's the problem. It's the length. You start going up half size in these, they just get to be pretty long. That's kind of the trouble in trying to recommend sizes for these. In terms of people I'd be recommending these to, you know, somebody with big toe joint arthritis, you know, someone that doesn't like their big toe joint bending, I could see these being of somewhat of a benefit as long as you have an orthotic on top of it that's got sufficient enough protection from that shank strobel. Because remember, most leaflets in the forefoot are underneath of foam, right? They're underneath of something, so it's a little more forgiving. This one's right on top. You know, if you've got heel pain, you know, in terms of plantar heel pain like bursitis or things like that, or just standing around, shooting around, then yeah, that air strobel is fantastic. But all that eversion that they allow, anybody that's straining, has arch strain, arch pain, plantar fascial straining, those types of things, you know, just because it's plush with the air strobel and the heel, and it is, like I said, comfortable to just walk around in, I don't know if it's good for those people, especially when you're actually putting force into the shoe and you're actually running, pivoting, jumping, things like that. I got to hand it to them to fixing the heel slippage, you know, and the comfort in the uppers. It's just, I just would like to have seen a little bit more forgiveness put into the forefoot of the shoe and into the actual shape of the shoe. And this is what KD likes. Remember, all these professional athletes have orthotics in their shoes, so he just might not care, right? This might be what he wants. And if it is, that's really cool. Because if this is really what he wants, it is really interesting what his needs are, what his wants are on the court. And yeah, this definitely could be it, especially what kind of, you know, his shooting mechanics and things like that. That forefoot strobel, that top loaded strobel, like I said, just might be exactly kind of what he wants. So yeah, like I said, it's an interesting design. It's not something I'd be recommending to anybody with any sort of shock-induced injury to their forefoot, especially previous stress fractures, bursitis, neuromas, things like that, patellar tendonitis, anything that has that shock going up the leg, I'd be really kind of hard-pressed on recommending them for, but having an orthotic in there definitely lifts these up into a category where I think they're, you know, definitely playable for sure. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. You know, speaking of this, I actually did go into a deep dive on how I would actually recreate the strobel board. I actually did a cutout and everything, made a really, you know, nice diorama of how it actually fixed the 17, and that still holds true on the 18. So if you want to check out that video, make sure you click into this video up above, subscribe down below. Respect, rubber, and foam. See you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.